All right, the thing about doing a painting with acrylic paint is that the more layers you have, the better the painting can become. And it also depends on how you layer it. So I'm making some adjustments, which is a little bit harder to do because I'm actually going to be lightening it up. In fact, you can see me doing that right now on camera. I'm lightening the area around the highlights because that's essentially what that round spot is. It's a highlight. So if you were looking at an apple, like a shiny apple, it would be the shiniest part of the apple. So I'm lightening that because I want it to look a little bit more yellow-orange rather than red. And on yours, you can keep layering. If you have the values correct, you can keep layering with the same layers, but it is okay to get some variety in there. For instance, if you're doing a blue sphere or radial gradient with blue, you can get in some violets in there. You could also get in some greens in the shadow, the darks or the medium darks in there. So it is okay, and in fact, I encourage you to use other colors that you might not suspect to be like on a red ball or a blue ball or whatever, because there are lots of colors within a sphere or within an object. And as long as the value scheme is correct, you should be okay. So at first, when you are trying to put a lighter color on top of a darker color, you will see it look like this, where it's a little bit transparent. That just means you have to add more layers. So on this radial gradient, I ended up putting about 8 layers on until I could perfect it. I really wanted to get the feeling of 3D. Like right now, there's a harsh line in between the midtones and the medium darks. I've got to smooth that. So it takes a while and it takes some finessing. It's also really hard to, if you get it right the first time, to try and duplicate it the second time. It's good practice. That's the sign of a good painter. Not just doing it one time, but be able to repeat that same process multiple times and demonstrate that you understand how to do a successful shift between, for instance, the medium dark to the mid-tone between the values. So that is your goal. You're going to try and make it look round. One thing I also suggest is to try looking at it from a little bit farther back. So when we're painting, we're oftentimes standing about a foot and a half, if we're lucky, away from the actual painting. But one thing you need to do is step back even farther. Try standing back 4 feet and then 6 feet. What that will tell you is whether or not your painting is starting to have volume. So does it look like a zoomed in version of a sphere? That's what our goal should be. So try that. You can do that at home. You can also do that in the classroom. Just make sure you're watching your spacing and your distancing, but it's a good practice to have. And don't get upset if the painting's not going right. Keep pushing it. That's one of the great things about acrylic paint is you can go over and over and layer it. Just watch that you're following that same value scheme. Watch that your brush strokes are short, so no more than an inch, and make sure that your strokes are also curved. They're wrapping around that form. They're curving around that form. So I'm going to pause. I'm working off camera here to try and get my sphere or my radial gradient to look more like a sphere, like a ball to pop out. I'm checking to make sure that the medium light is lighter than the mid-tone because that can be a little bit tricky. I want that right side to be just a degree lighter than the left, the mid-tone side. Okay, and that's where we're going to stop today. A minimum of 4 layers, but again, I went 8. So you can do that too. Just make sure that your paint isn't too thick, that you keep it to the same consistency, that you don't just slather it on, but you have the appropriate amount of paint loaded on your brush. And have fun with it.